Alright, what's up y'all? It's Devin here, the albino jackass, coming at you with a video today talking about the election. And is the honeymoon over for Kamala? And I'm going to get into what I think it is and isn't both a little bit. So if you look at at a couple of the polls that dropped on Real Clear Politics today, Trump has taken the lead. Now, that is in one of them is the Rasmussen poll, which does tend to favor Trump. It always has. But one that I find interesting is CNBC has Trump up 2 or 3, if memory serves me correctly. So that kind of opens the door. Is the honeymoon over for Kamala? You have the DNC coming up. You have her recently announcing her vice presidential pick, which we'll get into a little bit more here in a minute. But I think the honeymoon may be coming to an end, and especially with her VP pick. Now, usually the vice presidential pick doesn't matter all that much, but in this case, I think it does, both for Trump and for Kamala. And Trump, with his VP pick, really showed he was going to go with the populist wing of the Republican Party instead of the more traditional conservative wing of the Republican Party. Kamala kind of did the exact opposite. She doubled down on the progressive wing. And I mentioned it in my last video, Tim Walz is sort of the Bernie Sanders of Minnesota. The guy put, I kid you not, actually put tampons in the boys' bathroom, things like that. So completely coddled the BLM riots, of course, right there in Minneapolis. He coddled that whole group. Really, all in all, far left socialist guy. Kamala, again, far left socialist. It really doesn't bode well for her, I don't think. I think a lot of people are kind of sick of the radical element on either end. That's why I think J.D. Vance was the more mainstream, Main Street pick. The guy has kind of a similar background to mine in a lot of ways. A lot of people can relate to J.D. Vance. He's a little quirky, but I think he was a solid pick because, again, as I mentioned earlier, he does represent that more populist wing of the Republican Party. Whereas Kamala, like I said, doubled down on the far-left progressivism. And if you look back at American history throughout a lot of elections, this one kind of has a 1912 ring to it. Not 1912, excuse me, but a 1920 ring to it, in that people are kind of burnt out on the progressive policies. I think one of the big reasons Biden won in 2020 is because of a lot of the George Floyd riots. A lot of people may not have liked the rioting itself, but I think the culture had shifted a little to the left. In 2016, I think it was the exact opposite. I think the cultural shift at that time shifted more to the right. After George Floyd, you had a lot of people that traditionally would be conservative, especially at first, come out in solidarity with BLM. So I think the culture really shifted. The picture of Chauvin, obviously, was pretty powerful in and of itself. So I think they did a lot to shift it to the left and put Biden really over the edge. Now I think you're seeing the exact opposite. I think you're seeing the burnout of sort of the woke wing. I think a lot of people are sick of it. I think that's why Trump took the lead in these latest polls. Whether or not he can maintain it, I don't know. Trump is, he has a history of being reckless. But something that I think really has helped Kamala up until this point, and now I think it's starting to hurt her, is that she is not, here we are almost 3 weeks into her campaign, and she has yet to take a serious question from the media. She hasn't done a press conference, nothing. She's running a basement campaign, and that really doesn't bode well. I think you can look at Thomas Dewey in 1948 for a little bit of historical precedent to that. He gave a total of I think, like 16 total campaign speeches, and he lost. Donald Trump is kind of running into that problem right now. I think he needs to hit the campaign trail a lot more than what he is. But if Kamala continues to hide from the media, it's only going to hurt. a lot of people are going to consider that cowardly or, at the worst, suspicious. So I really would encourage both campaigns to get out there and campaign, get out there, what is it, the whistle stop tours, man. On the debate issue, I see, a lot of the left-wing people were saying Trump is afraid to debate. Kamala seems to want to keep the one agreed debate that Biden made before he dropped out. Trump has proposed 3. If Kamala will not get on Fox News and take a debate while Trump is going into hostile territory, like he did with the National Black Journalists, he did a 1-hour press conference, I believe, yesterday. Trump is showing that he's not afraid to take questions. He's not afraid to do interviews. He's not afraid to do press conferences. If Kamala keeps hiding, that's not going to bode well for her. It's going to send out a message of cowardice, I think. A message, it's going to send out a message of weakness. I don't think people like that in a president. I know I certainly don't. And this is what I meant in my other videos when I said she's just a bad campaigner. The Democrats will always have the celebrity endorsement. They're just always going to have it. So I don't think that matters at this point anymore. She's just being astroturfed, and to a lot of people, it rubs them the wrong way. It comes off like you're talking to them like they're stupid. It's condescending. Entitlement. It almost seems as if she thinks she deserves the presidency. And, I believe she does. I legitimately believe Kamala, much like Hillary Clinton, believes she is entitled to the presidency. I think that's why she's doing this. The media is going to fawn and run cover and just try to blanket this all the way to the election. They're not going to ask her a serious question. I don't think they're going to, at least until after the convention. The growing pressure, I think, is going to force them to at least pretend to. But we'll have to wait and see. When you look at the swing state polls, she has sort of, I haven't seen any recent ones out of any, especially the blue wall states. The last ones I saw had her leading in those states. Trump has to win, obviously, the Midwest, the Rust Belt, if he's going to win the election. I think that's a big reason why he picked J.D. Vance. Now, maybe Kamala thought Tim Walz, being a Minnesota guy, would give her some Rust Belt appeal. And as somebody who lived in Ohio for quite a long time, the culture in rural Ohio is not that different from Indiana. And the same goes for Michigan as well. So if Kamala does not execute this campaign perfectly, and she has to execute it perfectly, she loses. And let me explain to you why. See, I was actually one of the very few people in 2016 that actually predicted Trump's election. And let me explain to you how I did it. Everybody knows the website 270 to Win. So me and my cousin Dwayne, shout out to him, we would go through the polls each day from about September until the election. And we would make our electoral map based off of that. And we had a system. If the state was within 2 points in the polls, we genuinely flipped it, or you went by the culture of that state. And what I mean by that, we had Iowa going red. Why? The culture in Iowa is not that different than the culture in Ohio. Trump won Ohio by 8 points. I believe it was a similar margin in Iowa, both in 2016 and 2020. I could be wrong about that, though. I haven't looked at the margins in a while. So we had him winning Iowa. We had him winning Pennsylvania. I eventually ended up giving Michigan and Wisconsin to Hillary Clinton, and I gave Nevada to Trump, just based on the rules that I had laid out. That was pretty close to what ended up happening in 2016. And in 2020, by using that same metric, it was pretty clear to me Biden was going to win. You take those, because again, I mentioned this earlier in the video, the culture shift in 2020. A lot of people may not have liked the rioting, but a lot more people were on board to the systemic racism, the culture started to lean more left in 2020. We got an overload of that. I think people severely underestimated how far to the left Joe Biden was going to go. And I really had hopes for Biden at the beginning of his administration. I was hoping he was going to kind of be a Democratic Dwight D. Eisenhower, sort of Grandpa Joe up there, and he wasn't. He let the far left Bernie people run the show, and we see what kind of shape that's got the country in. You know, you can be liberal, conservative, progressive, whatever, and you cannot tell me that the country is in better shape now than it was under Donald Trump. And even Trump's handling of the pandemic, which wasn't that great, I don't know how you can say that we're better off now. The only thing you can really point to is unemployment on the economic scale, and that's beginning to fall apart. You have the stock market crashing. I mean, crashing. I don't think it's went this hard. I haven't seen it fall this much in quite a long time. Maybe since 2007, 2008. That's the only one that comes to mind right off the top of my head when you look at the recent crashes. So, again, I don't think any of this bodes well for Kamala. It's one of the things that the public needs to do. You cannot excuse her or distance her from this administration. You know, we see how Biden is. He's practically senile. That leaves open who is running the country. Is it Jill? Is it Kamala? Is it someone else? This really is what opens you people up to the whole deep state lizard people conspiracy horseshit. It's because you won't be honest from the get-go. But that's another issue. So either Kamala is completely separate from this administration, she's had nothing to do with it, which begs the question, what has she been doing for the past 3-4 years? Or she is the last person out of the meeting, she's the first person in the meetings and all the briefings and all of this, meaning she is at least somewhat responsible. You know, I'm old enough to remember when they tried to tie John McCain and Mitt Romney to George W. Bush. John McCain was in the Senate. Mitt Romney had no pre-existing relationship with George W. Bush that I can think of. But they still get tied in with him, and now the media is going to try to separate Kamala from the unpopular Biden administration. And people, I think a lot of people are going to see right through that. Some might not. And this is a thing that I think a lot of Republicans need to remember is, for all of the faults I just mentioned, underestimate Kamala Harris at your own peril. Because she is going to have the backing of the media, the cultural machine, the entertainment industry, all of that. And that is a tough mountain to climb no matter who the politician is. Donald Trump has a lot of name recognition. He's got a lot of star power on his own. But he's also very, very abrasive in his personality. He's very, very, aggressive. So that shuts a lot of people off. No matter what you think of Donald Trump, he is very off-putting to a lot of people. A lot of people don't like him. His inarticulate speaking style leads people to think he's an idiot, perhaps rightfully so. But you look at, oh Lord, I lost my train of thought there. You look at Kamala, and she has all of this going, all of, that going for her. And it is a very powerful thing, and Trump is so off-putting. It's like I mentioned this in another video, 40% of the population is just never going to like Trump. They're never going to be pro-Trump, no matter what. The guy could get out there and save orphans, and they would still find a way to critique it. And of that 40%, 20% of that are completely nuts, like I mentioned in my last video. They're completely unhinged, Trump derangement syndrome, foaming at the mouth, crazy. And I've seen these people firsthand. I actually went in 2020, me and my fiance did, to a Trump rally in Ohio. And the Trump supporters were as friendly as could be. It reminded me a lot of a tailgate at a football game. You had a little crowd of Biden-Harris lefty protesters there. And I swear to you guys, there was this one woman in particular in the crowd that reminded me of a rabid dog, just screaming, shaking her head, frothing at the mouth. You know, that is the wing of the party that is completely taken over for the Democrats. There are almost no moderates left. And, you know, one of the things they're really trying to do is paint Tim Walz as a moderate, and it's just not going to work. I'm not even going to get into the stolen valor allegations yet. I want to do a little more research into that. But apparently, and this is, I'm not going to get into it, but as far as I've been able to tell, and this is what I'm hearing, Tim Walz completely abandoned his unit when it was about to get deployed. So that's not going to look good. It kind of reminds me of what they did. I'm old enough to remember the 2004 election when John Kerry tried to brag about his war record and he just got completely annihilated. My granddad, all of his brothers were Vietnam veterans. They ripped him to shreds. It just didn't work. So if they're going to try to run that angle, it's not going to work. The only thing that can really save Kamala at this point is she cannot take any interviews or anything like that until at the very least after the convention. I think that's actually a cynical but smart move on her part. But once the convention's over, there's really no place she can hide. Right now, you could kind of make the argument that she might not be the nominee. Something crazy may happen at the DNC. Not going to happen, but you can at least make that argument for right now. And if what I'm seeing in the polls right now is true, I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Let's say the polls come out Monday and Trump's lead continues to grow. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they try to dump her at the convention. That's how cutthroat these people are to win. I could honestly see that. But, you know, the real question, is the honeymoon over? I think it's starting to end. I don't think it'll truly be over until, like I mentioned, after the convention. But I think that's where we're at. My advice to the Trump campaign would be to attack relentlessly. But you got to go blitzkrieg on this, man. Because the media are going to run a blitzkrieg on you. The best defense in this scenario would be a Mike Leach, Hal Mummy air raid offense for the Trump campaign. That's what they need right now. Kamala's record as a prosecutor is absolutely horrible. You know, I'm not a big fan of the federal marijuana laws. She has put people in prison for marijuana offenses. She's convicted innocent people. You know, she was a terrible, incompetent prosecutor, a terrible, incompetent district, DA or whatever, attorney general for California. Any role she serves in, she's terrible at. I think I made the joke in my last video that she's like Timmy's mom in that episode of Fairly Odd Parents where everything she touches dies. That's where I think we're at with Kamala. So, do I think she's going to win? No. Do I think that means that Republicans should get lazy? No, because if you let this media machine run its game, you will lose. It is a very effective, very potent propaganda machine, man. They will pump this out on industrial levels. So, again, man, my advice to the Trump campaign, air raid, Hal Mummy, Mike Leach offense from now until the election. Kamala, my advice would honestly be the same. Actually get out there and do interviews, because right now you look like a coward. But that's where I think I'm going to wrap the video up, guys. Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. I've been the Albino Jackass. Thanks for listening to me hee-haw. Have a great day, guys.